look at living for others. Living for others. Now, let me also mention this before I go to talk about living for others. Am I saying that you should live your life only for the approval of other people? No. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, people who do that cannot be good Christians. The only person whose approval you need is the approval of Christ. So it's living your life for Christ that really you should do. When I say don't live for self, it doesn't mean looking for external validation from other humans for all your actions. It is getting validation from Christ that he's happy with your life, with your actions, that you're doing the right thing, that he expects of you as the owner of new life that you now possess. I hope I'm making sense. Praise the Lord. There's a popular illustration that is given in many cultures. When I was a child, a musician sang it in a song. I've seen it written in many books. It's a popular illustration of a man who was with his son, and they were going somewhere with a horse. The horse could not carry two of them, only carry one at a time. So the man, being an old man, decided to ride the horse while his son is walking, because the son is young and strong. And people saw them. What kind of wicked man is this? He's riding the horse and his son is walking on the foot. So he came down from the horse and then told the son to climb to the back of the horse. And he was now walking on foot. Other people saw them. What kind of useless boy? This boy is inconsiderate. He's a young, agile, and his old father is walking on foot. So the boy came down from the horse. And the two of them were walking. And the horse, nothing on the back, was walking with them. And other people saw them. See, these two foolish people. One of them cannot utilize this horse. So the people didn't know what to do. So now they decided, father and son, to carry the horse on their head. And so they were walking and carrying the horse on the head, and people were laughing. I never see useless imbeciles. A horse is meant to be ridden on, and they are carrying the horses. Now, the story, of course, is not true. It's just an illustration. It's teaching us that you cannot please everybody. There would always be somebody that will criticize anything you are doing. So you do not live your life for the approval of men. So when we talk about not living for self, we're not talking about living for the approval of human beings. We're talking about living for the approval of Christ. I hope that is clear. So what do we mean by living for others? Living for others can have both a positive and a negative sense. Let's talk about the negatives. Those that are living for others negatively, the things that drive them are what others will say. It is the external validation. When they hear other people talk about how wonderful their life is, that's what they're living for. If they go to buy a new car, it is so that they can hear other people say, oh, my brother, this your car is one in town. And then they post it on social media. And as they post it on social media, they cannot sleep. They have to wake up every few minutes to come and see how many people have liked the picture. Are you with me? And that's what is driving them, especially those that came from Nigeria, newly arrived abroad, and they think that have come to life. They want to show people back home that they have arrived, that they're living big. So maybe they buy a Bentley or buy whatever, and take a picture and put it on Facebook, and then they're checking how many likes. And that's what's driving them. That's living for others. You didn't buy the car because you needed it. You bought it so that you will get all those likes. Or a house. Or whatever. You just want to get that external validation and approval. What drives you is what others think about you, not what God thinks about you, unfortunately. You set your goals based on what others want for you. It could even be your parents. Your goals are driven by what your parents want for you, not what is good for you, especially if you don't have godly parents. You are chasing what society deems as a success. What does society in the UK deem as a success? Success in the UK society is that you have a nice car, you live in a nice part of town, you dress nicely, so you've arrived. That's success. And people are living for those external things. But true success is success as defined by God in the Bible of having a heart that has been rescued from sin and been given the gift of salvation. That's great success. There are those in living for others because they're so driven to impress others. Maybe they are here and then it's, again, back at home in the village, back in the country where they come from, is to just prove a point there. Maybe go back, build some big mansion. And so that, not because they need it, so that everybody would say they have arrived. So when I was in uni, I was a friend of mine. His father was a wealthy, upper middle class kind of person. And he didn't live in the town. No, he didn't live in the village. He lived in town, but they had a big house in the village. And the house was empty most of the year and was occupied by, tenants. The tenants that live in the house? Rats, lizards, cockroaches. And every year, when they are coming home in December, somebody has to even go ahead of them to clean the place before the house is habitable. So the house was obviously not built because it was really, really needed. It was built as a kind of status symbol. And then when, from time to time, my friend who was in the same school as me, he would get a message from the village that somebody had come and stolen the light fittings on the fence. And then he would go to the village and then replace the light fittings. I think sometimes somebody managed to even get into the building and stole the curtains on walls, doors and windows. And those it was a headache maintaining that place. Those things were happening because nobody was living there. A friend of mine in another part of the country was sharing with me how somebody had this big mansion, very well furnished in the village. He only goes there once a year. And then one year he arrived. Somebody had broken. They didn't even know when the house was broken into. Probably months before. A flat screen TV mounted on the wall. The sound system, everything was gone. So, maybe some build these things because, okay, they want to have a place back in the village. But others build it so that they can say, I have arrived. And it is that validation of others that's driving them. I want it such that when you go to my town, my hometown, or to my village, and you talk about the people who have arrived, by the time you count number 1 to 10, my name must be. And that's what is driving them. Are you following me? That's living for others. And living for others has killed many people. I met a young man when we pastored in the Netherlands. And he told me about his friend. He was a cleaner in my office. So because at that time I was doing my MBA, I normally stayed behind to work beyond the closing time because I used to write my exams at the end of the year and then my annual leave. Because I had a young family, I still needed to travel with the family. So summer we must travel. Sometimes come back home. Sometimes we have conferences, church activities, and so on. So all those events that take me away from work doesn't leave me with enough annual leave to write my exams. So I negotiated with my boss in the office to allow me to work extra hours and on weekends so that I can accumulate those days and write my exam. So when the other people are gone, I'll be the one alone there doing some work. And then the cleaners come in when others have gone. So he will come in to clean. So I befriended him. I started to talk to him and invited him to church. Eventually started to come to church at some point. Then he told me about his friend who was also a cleaner. So they had contracts to clean offices. It's not a glamorous job, but they were making enough to live by. They both had cars. I think his friend had a BMW car. And then he was still making about 2,000 euros every month. That's not pittance. Are you with me? So they were living at this time a reasonable life, and then they had acquired their residency papers to be able to live. In fact, they had become Dutch citizens. After a very long, tortuous process of claiming asylum and all that, after more than 10 years, they had finally achieved their goal. So things were looking good. And the one that was cleaning in my office was contented, happy with his state of life. Now, the other one, who was his friend, all those years when they were seeking asylum, he came from Nigeria. He could never travel to Nigeria. So as soon as he got his paper and he could now travel, he went back home to go and visit his people. And when he went, he came back and he was very sorrowful, very moody. So his friend called him and said, why are you went home, you came back, you should be happy, excited. Why are you so sorrowful? He said, my brother, when I got back home, all those people that didn't go anywhere, if you see the mansions they have in the village, me that came to Netherlands, I've been in Netherlands for 10 years, I have nothing. So he felt that he had nothing and was comparing himself and decided that his 2,000 euro a month with a nice apartment and a BMW car was no longer enough. He needed to catch up. And you know what he did? He became a drug dealer. He will acquire his drugs in Netherlands, travel to London, sell it, and return. And he had a boss that was providing him, who was his boss in the evil trade that he got into. And within a short time, he became very wealthy, and he stopped cleaning offices. But one day, one weekend, it was he was married at this time, had 2 children. It was the birthday of one of his children, and he wasn't home. The wife, I don't think, really knew what he was into, because, he didn't tell her all the secrets of the evil that he was doing. So it was his son's birthday, and he didn't call to say happy birthday. So the wife became worried. And while they were still wondering what's going on, the police arrived to see the wife. And then they sat her down and started to tell her they are very sorry. They don't have good news. The husband was on one of those journeys to go and deliver his drugs in London. He normally swallows them. And then maybe one of them busted in his stomach. And they said he just stretched out in the bus. He was traveling in the bus. And he died inside the bus. What killed him? Living for others. He wanted to catch up. Build his own. There were the houses they used to build at that time. They call it send down the rain. You know the one they call send down the rain, the design? One side of it might be a 3-story building. Then the other side is a bungalow. And then the roof line is very from the 3 stories to the bungalow side. So they call it send down the rain. He wanted one in the village. And then he took to illegal business and he killed them. So people have had their lives ruined because they want to live for others. People have gotten into debt that wrecked their health because they wanted to live for others. You couldn't, the job that you have cannot afford a Tesla, which is a range. This is like so many Teslas in Aberdeen, and those things are not cheap. The other day I was walking up Wellington Road, I saw Tesla dealership there. So it wasn't in Aberdeen before. So people are buying them as a kind of status symbol, and I think the top model probably costs like £100,000. You can't afford them, but you want to show that you have arrived. You go to Tesla dealer, you pay £10,000, which you may even have borrowed as a loan, and then they give you a Tesla, then you have to be paying maybe £1,200 a month for the next 3 years, I don't know, depending, whatever. And then things become difficult because you wanted to show that you have arrived. If you really needed it, that's fine. But if you didn't need it, There are the people, especially who are not Christians, do not have the Spirit of God in them. And because of this living for others, they put themselves under this kind of pressure and eventually it wrecks their health. We had a young boy who worked for us in the house. And he obviously wanted to live big. He was a student doing his master's, but he bought himself a brand new BMW from Africa. An African student came from Ghana. Bought himself a brand new BMW. He was paying finance on that car. He lived in a good apartment and brought his siblings living with him. And then we gave him a job to do in the house. Virtually everything he did for us, I'm having to redo them. He stole most of the money and collected in total more than 30,000 pounds. And by the time we discovered it was too late, he was so fraudulent that even when he was leaving Aberdeen, he left Aberdeen and went back to Africa. That car, with finance on it, was still owing the finance company. He sold it to one of his friends, collected the money, and then when the finance company was tracing, they sold the car and collected it back because it's still their car. So his friend paid him for the car, and the car was taken. What led him into all that? Living for others. He wants to live big. So that's living for others. Now let's turn to the crux of our message, which is living for Jesus. Living for Jesus. Let's look back at our passage again, 2 Corinthians 5:14 or 13 to 15. For whether we be beside ourselves, it is to God, or whether we be sober, it is for your cause. For the love of Christ constraineth us, because we thus judge that if one died for all, then we're all dead. And he died for all, that they which live should not henceforth live unto themselves, but unto him which died for them and rose again. So living for Christ, living for Jesus. As we said, the life we have now is not our own. It's a gift from God. It belongs to God. And we cannot use it as we like. We must use it as God likes, as God wants. So God has a rightful claim over every one of us. God is saying to you, you are now my slave. I own you. You will do what I want, or you should do what I want. Of course, being a human being that has been given choice, you can decide to say, I'm not going to do what you want. But at the end of life, you will reap the repercussions for failing to do what you want. But God is telling us clearly that we do not belong to ourselves. We're not our own any longer. We're his slaves. Coming to Christ has not given us liberty to do anything we want. We exchange one yoke for another. The only difference is one is a bad yoke that will destroy us, and the other is a good yoke. Am I making sense? We were under the yoke of sin. We were under the control of Satan. Jesus comes, he gives us the glorious salvation and the glorious liberty of being a child of God, being a daughter, a son of the Most High. And that liberty does not mean that we now live our lives anyhow and we do whatever we just feel like doing. That liberty that is given to us is liberty from the yoke of Satan, from the bondage of Satan. But we take on a new yoke, and that's the yoke of Christ. That henceforth we live not for Satan, but we now live for Christ. We live not for ourselves, but we live for Christ. But his yoke is easy, and his burden is light. His yoke is a good yoke. The other one is a destructive yoke. Praise the Lord. So it is recognizing that I was once a sinner. Christ saved me, and he has recruited me to now be an agent to save others. Every time I see a sinner, the same compassion that Jesus demonstrated towards me, that brought me my salvation, should well up in my heart towards that person, and I should be an agent of salvation to that individual. God did not save me, He didn't grant me salvation to just live on my own and not impact the life of any other person. And then at the end, when the day is up, close my eyes and go to live an eternity with Him. That's not what we're saved for. If Jesus had not died for us, we would have continued in a hopeless life that would have led to eternal damnation. So because of this knowledge that He died for us, we don't own ourselves any longer. He owns us. Living for Him means that He's number one in our lives. The other things are no longer number one. The things that used to be number one before, that are still number one in the lives of many that do not know Christ. The money, maybe family, career, the job, friends, school, pleasure, enjoying ourselves. We like to go from pop to pop to pop. When we first came to Aberdeen for 2 months, we lived in Skin House in the city center. On Friday night, I used to open my window. We stayed there for almost 2 months. Open the window and look out. At that time, they had a cinema at near that McLeod Hall. And then on the Friday night, people just troop into town, into all those places, and live their riotous life. And at about 1, 2 in the morning, early Saturday morning, is when they're staggering out of the pub, out of those places, drunk and plastered and wasted. And those things were the things that some lived for, that were driving them. Those things were number one in their lives. In those days, they had not yet banned smoking in the pubs. So you enter a pub and the cigarette smokers are out, the place is blue, the air is blue. The smokers are everywhere. The law came later to ban smoking in public places. So I was in the office working here for the company. And then they will send out an email maybe on Wednesday. Who wants to go out Friday? And I'll say, I'm not interested. So at the time I started to feel I was a bit antisocial, that they will be thinking that I'm antisocial. So I decided to join them. Man, my eyes saw things. We'll go to the place and then enter the pub and they start ordering beer. Normally it will be, we're going out for a meal as a team. Maybe 5 of us, 7 of us, 10 of us, 12 of us, as many as are available. You arrive there, and then the beer starts coming in pints. But I was already a Christian, so I don't drink beer, so I order orange juice. And my orange juice cup is smaller than the pint glass. Are you with me? But when I'm struggling to finish my orange juice, if I succeed, I drink 2 for the 1 hour or so we are at the pub. The rule was that if there are 6 of us, they bring 6 glasses. As the glasses are empty, another person will get up to the counter, bring another 6. Another one will go until all 6 have gone. So if there are 6 of us, in that time, they will drink 6 pints of beer. I am struggling to drink 2 glasses of oranges. And then they will say, it's my turn to go and bring for everybody. Because to be fair to everybody, when you go, you pay. So that another person is not paying for you. Are you getting the logic? So I will tell them, well, I'm happy to go, but if I go, I'm coming back with oranges for everybody. And they will laugh and say, Joseph, don't bother, just wait. And then someone else will go. And then when I come home, my wife will say, where are you coming from? Because my whole body is stinking cigarette smoke. And I didn't smoke anything. But by just being there, my jacket, everything is permeated with the smell of the cigarette. And people live for that. Are you following me? When you are living for Christ, those things are no longer in your life. They're not number one for you any longer. You are delivered from the yoke of it. Your job is no longer number one in your life. I've seen people who are very successful in their careers. They can grow so much in their profession. They can meet with presidents, head states, leaders in the World Bank and all the United Nations, big organizations. And from time to time, they can talk about these things. However, spiritually, they've not made any progress. Are you following me? Successfully, not this, but spiritually, not where they should be. Because they have prioritized career, prioritized all those other things over and above the relationship with God. Living for Christ means that our relationship with Him, His priority is number one over all these other things. I talked about the one that is evil, that is sinful. There are other things that are not sinful. But the fact that they are not sinful does not mean that as a child of God, they should be number one in your life over your relationship with Christ. To have a good career is not a sin, it's a fantastic thing. In fact, the church needs people with a good career. Should all of us be working in a care home? Some of us own care home now, are we? Yeah. Some of us should own big businesses that employ hundreds of people. So it's not a bad thing, but when it becomes number one and displaces the relationship with Christ, it's a problem. Our friends. How do friends, what's an example of how friends can take over a relationship with God? How they become God for us? Where maybe those friends are not Christians, they don't share the same views. And on Sunday morning is when they want to go and play golf. Golf was invented in Scotland, America. It's a popular sport there. And then you are supposed to be a child of God, you've known Jesus. On Sunday morning, you want to go to church and have fellowship. And they're pulling you to play golf. But because their relationship is much more important to you than the relationship with you and God, you abandon church and you go and play golf. So friends are not number one. Playing golf is not sin. Are you with me? But when you abandon church to go and play golf, that's a problem. Or it's your career. Work. Because you have some goal you want to attain. And it's great, as we said, to go high in whatever career path you choose. But when you are so much consumed by that career that you don't even have time to go to Bible study, to go to charismatic hour, to go to church, then there is a problem. Or your family. Or there are some people in sports. There are people that, during Olympic Games, there's going to be another Olympics next year, America. During the games, if they are showing their favorite event and it clashes with fellowship, and they won't come to fellowship. America is Olympics, It's not, but when it has taken the place of God. I have a friend who was so much into football that football was a god to him. He told me with his own mouth. I didn't even know it was such a problem in his life. He would carry his Bible home to go to church. And then, unfortunately, his route passed beside a football pitch. Local football, where people were just playing football. And then he stayed there and said, let me watch a little. And he was there until fellowship finished. From that football field, he returned home with his Bible. He didn't get to church. When they are playing World Cup, are there not people that when the country they are supporting is playing and it clashes with fellowship time, they won't come to church? Is it not so? So, living for Christ means that Jesus and our relationship with him is number one in our lives, and nothing else is number one.